All right, Phil, thanks for joining, mate. Good to see you here. Sorry about the technology issues earlier, but we made it. We're here.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for having me, Stuart. Excited to jump in and share some stuff with the group.
Yeah, no, it's been awesome to see you being super active in the group, and I bet the members are finding your input very valuable. So I appreciate that. So yeah, today really, I really want to be able to introduce you to the group, to get to know you a little bit more. Your background, what your experience is, who you are, what you do, and then a few questions around ecom in general for both sellers and buyers, and how we can kind of optimize their experience.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, sounds good, man.
Awesome. So let's start with who you are. How did you end up being the ecom man?
Yeah, interesting story, man. So I kind of started first, let's go back a decade or so. I graduated law school, wanting to be a lawyer, and kind of found out it wasn't like, suits on TV. It wasn't millions of dollars straight away. So got a little bit annoyed at that and moved into corporate banking for a bit and hated the corporate world even more and kind of just stepped aside and started my first few ecom businesses. So yeah, first few didn't go very well, lost a decent chunk of change, so to speak. But a few after that ended up doing very, very well. And I ended up selling a few of them in the US. And, once you see, a couple of 100,000 come through from a few little deals, you're like, wow, what is the, potential of this long term?
Mm,
So I had a big focus for a long time as well with Amazon in the US and kind of stuck to that for a fair while, like until kind of during COVID. And after that, I kind of went back to just Shopify and e-commerce holistically. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of been an interesting journey. I started doing it myself and then helping a lot of people over years just start e-com businesses. But today, my key focus really is helping people acquire profitable, clean businesses online and obviously
nice.
helping people that I work with to exit their companies as well. So that's kind of what's led me here to 2025.
Nice, man. It's funny, you know how many people that go into business start off in corporate land and realize that corporate jobs aren't what they're cracked up to be. And I think that trend is increasing now, right? I think the awareness in general of there is an alternative to having a 9 to 5 job, and a good opportunity, particularly right now, is to buy a pre-existing business because, as you experience and many entrepreneurs have experienced, including myself, those first 1, 2, 3 businesses that you start while you have all these great ideas oftentimes don't work out. So buying a business that stands on its own 2 feet from day one is a great outcome.
Yeah, for sure. And look, the industry average is, 80 or 85% of businesses fail in the first 2 years. So,
Yeah.
you're really playing Russian roulette. Like you can obviously pull it off, but it is a very competitive landscape. And I feel the best way to be successful is to really, first of all, determine what your goal is.
Mm,
Like if you're working a corporate job, you're making, I don't know, 200K a year, it's not going to be easy for you to step aside by buying a business making 2 grand a month,
yeah.
right? So you really need to know your parameters and
Hmm.
then go out there and find a business that is going to give you the potential to kind of part-time scale up your income. And if you really go full steam ahead, you can kind of scale it to a level which is at your income level or more. And then you've got that freedom, right? You
Yeah.
can kind of step aside. So it's hard, if you've got a family, a mortgage, all those normal human considerations to just dump it all and go start a business in your 30s, 40s, or 50s. So, you really got to understand what you're looking for and then kind of reverse engineer that process from there.
That's a really good point, actually. I think it's very easy to just assume every business is any business, I should say, is right. But, based on what you've just said, and I completely agree with what you said, is, understanding where you're trying to get to and your current circumstances and what you need in between, is a good starting point because it'll direct the type of businesses that you kind of look into.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
Awesome. So how about we crack into some questions? We'll look at I'll ask some questions from both the buyer and sell side to kind of add as much value as we can. So we'll start on the sell side.
Hmm.
Obviously you work with ecom business owners that are looking to exit in the near future and help them kind of maximize that outcome. So what would you say the top 3 strategies would be for an ecom owner that they can implement or start implementing today to increase the value of their business before selling?
Mm. Yeah, so there's there's definitely a couple of things. Number one thing that would come to mind is if you are thinking of selling, you need to have your numbers clean.
Mm,
And there's nothing worse than a dirty business that looks nice on face value. So it's not always intentional. You know, you might start a business and you've got another company and you're putting your expenses under that company and everything's
yeah.
kind of washed in. So it makes it very difficult to then dissect what the real numbers are for a buyer. So you got to think ahead a little bit and put yourself in their perspective, right? Like if you were to buy your business, what would you actually want to see?
Mm,
Because, you know, sellers are blindsided. You know, they think that their business is the best thing since sliced bread. And potentially it is, but the way they're presenting it isn't very favorable. So clear numbers is very, very important. Like if you don't have it, go talk to your accountant and clean it up before you want to go to
yeah.
market because it makes the work on the back end of the sale a lot easier.
100%. Yeah. And just to add to that, man, I think you made a good point, but just to clarify it, I think for business owners, knowing what your exit strategy is in that one particular business will ensure that you make the decisions along the way that when you get to selling, you don't have to think about, oh, I've got 2 or 3 businesses mixed in. If I had to realize or thought long term and realized that I would have wanted to sell this business, I wouldn't have done that. So having that in the back of your mind as a business owner of where you want to get to and how you want to exit will probably help kind of mitigate some of those mistakes that some people might make as well.
Yeah, exactly. It's the same thing as buying a business, right? You got to
Yeah.
think into the future
Mm,
and really plan what that's going to look like. Another thing I think is really important is having clear systems and procedures.
yeah.
Like there is going to be a handover period, and you know, instead of handing someone a notepad with some scribble on it, like you really should have all your processes in place. So someone can step in and say, wow, I can learn how to run this business in 2 days
Mm,
and then you can kind of guide me over the next month or two. So even if I'm kind of fresh to e-commerce, I've got a process for fulfilling orders. I've got a process for running the ads. And
yeah.
I don't need to be an expert, but I know enough to at least keep it at your level just from the procedures and documentation. So just having clear financials, clear SOPs in place is really important. And the third thing I think is really important is to really ensure that you've got your strong brand presence as well
Mm,
and really strong assets. Like by assets, I mean, you know, having a community of people that like your brand. So you're not just, you know, making one-time transactions selling a random
yeah.
product, but people want to see businesses that have recurring revenue or recurring customers coming back.
Hmm.
So, you know, trying to diversify that a little bit, having, you know, an email list, having an SMS list,
Yeah.
engaging with them, doing promotions, doing lives in your groups, right? So people actually look at it as a brand that they recognize and want to come back to, as opposed to just some, you know, random thing they bought 6 weeks ago and they're never going to buy it again.
Yeah, yeah. So they're 2 really great points. I think on the process and system side, even if you're a one person, you're the owner operator and do everything. As someone that's on the buy side, as a buyer, you look at that stuff, and if there's no processes and systems in place, that's a massive risk because if that person's out of the business, that you've got nothing, right? But if you've got structured processes, like you said, the incoming buyer or owner at least has that documented and they can refer back to it and they're comfortable that they can run it as it's running.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly right.
yeah, so no, great points there. I really like that. So how long should an e-commerce business owner plan and prepare before considering an exit or putting it on the market?
That's a hard one because it kind of depends on the points we talked about,
Mm,
right? If you've got everything clean and ready to go, I mean, you can go on the market in 24 hours,
yeah.
right? But if you don't have those things in place, then you've got to do a bit of groundwork and really get your accountant, you know, to come in and, you know, make sure you've got all your systems and procedures ready. And obviously have a bit of a story as well, like a scaling story, a story and history of the business that is favorable to a new buyer,
Mm,
right? Like if you've got a business and I don't know, let's say 3 years ago you did a million profit, 2 years ago you did 700, and now you did 400, and you're looking to sell because it's a great opportunity. I mean, that doesn't sound like a great opportunity to a
yeah.
new buyer.
Yeah.
I mean, look, there's obviously exceptions. Someone might come in and be an expert in that field and know what to
Mm,
do to turn it around, but it has to look favorable, that it's at least stable, or has potential to scale. People are looking for businesses that are simple to run, the numbers are clean, and they have a vision that they can take it from where it is to the next level or whatever that means for them.
Yeah, absolutely. No, great point. Great point. What would you say the common mistakes are you see in ecom sellers that negatively impact or could negatively impact the exit?
Yeah, so once again, a lot of the things we covered, just not having accounting, not having SOPs. I think a few other things are over reliance on like a single sales channel. So, you could be just running Facebook ads and that's the only thing you've done.
Yeah.
I mean, look, Facebook ads are great, but what if Zucky, changes his mind tomorrow and your business goes to zero?
Yeah.
So diversification as well of sales channels, I think is really, really important. Yeah, so I'd say that's really the other key thing. Another thing I think is just expectation management, right? So everybody wants to get the best price for their business, but in reality, you need to know what you're dealing with and have just a bit of an understanding of what your business is realistically worth.
Yeah.
If you've been doing 100K a year in profit for 2 years and you want to get $800,000 for your business, like, I mean, it sounds great, but it's pretty damn unrealistic.
Yeah.
So just having the right expectations.
I love that point because it's something that I see regularly, and I think it comes down to a couple of things. One, I often see the emotional kind of price put on it by an owner, particularly in businesses where they haven't necessarily done super well and they've kind of haven't paid themselves much. They've done all the things and they hope for that, they get the big hit at the end, which obviously isn't reality. Like you said, at the end of the day, is based on your industry, your multiple, and your EBITDA at the end of, with a couple of nuances in there. But and the other one is, I guess to your point, just having unrealistic expectations and then spending the money in their head based on the price that they point based on emotion. It's really hard to come back from that. So I think a couple of key points, if I can point out from what you said, get a professional appraisal or evaluation, whether that's through a broker, whether it's an accountant, get a professional appraisal, and even more than one if you can. If you're not selling with a broker, if you're selling with yourself, at least that way you've got a really firm, objective understanding of what your business is actually worth, and you're taking it to market with the right price, as opposed to pricing it way out of field and just not getting any inquiries or qualified inquiries.
Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah, once again, all goes back to having the mindset before you sell, getting everything ready, having the right expectations, doing some research. And look, if you are a little bit messy, you don't have all those things in place, maybe getting a professional to help you is worth it. Because, yeah, I mean, obviously you pay a professional, but you pay your accountant to do your taxes so you don't go to jail. You pay a lawyer to help you so you don't go to jail. And you pay a business broker to guide you so you get the best result and make sure that all your ducks are in order, so to speak.
And look, I completely agree. And I think a big perception out there is all brokers are bad. And I think, well, let's talk about that now on a little bit of a left field. But look, it's like any profession, right? You can get good lawyers and bad lawyers. I think the assumption is if you're a qualified lawyer, they're all the same. And I think people learn the hard way that that's not the case. It's the same with brokers. It's finding the right broker with the right experience for your business, and then making sure if you want to sell with a broker, you don't have to clearly, but if you want to go down that path and get that additional support, there are good brokers out there. So I think let's finish on a last question for the buyer side. What would be some red flags buyers should look out for when looking into e-commerce businesses?
Some red flags. I would say number one, just really inconsistent financials. So there are some businesses out there that are very seasonal, and I think that's a nuance that really only suits experts in that field. If you're relatively new to e-commerce or you're new to online businesses, starting with something that isn't seasonal and is, relatively consistent is important.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, there's always going to be spikes around, Black Friday or specific sales events, but something that isn't, making 80% of its revenue in 2 months of the year is probably a good way to do it, especially if you need some form of finance to help you. It's going to be difficult to obtain finance because, the bank's going to look at it and say, what if that 2-month period doesn't happen this year? You're screwed. So I think that's important. But also, just making sure that the whole brand you're buying is consistent. So the story makes sense. You do your background check on the owners. You go through the financials, you get your accountant to check out the financials, you look how simple it's going to be to run the business once you obtain it. Because another thing is, right, like sometimes you'll find a business that's an online business, but the owner is doing 40 hours a week of work and you've got a 40-hour-a-week job and your goal is to transition out. I mean, unless you can do 80 hours a week, it's probably not going to happen.
Yeah.
So over-reliance as well on one key person in the business can be stressful for the new seller, for the new buyer. So yeah, just finding something that fits the bill for you, but financials, SOPs, clear financials, not all the sales made in 1 or 2 months, and just doing some simple background checks. If you can cover that, then you're at least 80% of the way there.
Awesome, man. They're great points. Awesome. Thanks for that. And I guess before we go, have you got any other kind of gold nuggets that you'd like to drop into the group? Any other thoughts that you'd like to kind of pass on?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always kind of researching and dissecting what's happening in the market. So, every year is a little bit different. I think moving forward, there is a big push and big demand for online businesses that have specific attributes. So one of them I think is there's a big demand for businesses that are subscription or recurring. So, monthly recurring revenue, MRR, is very, very important. And businesses that have that, they demand a higher multiple.
100%, yeah.
So if you're doing one-time transactions and doing 50K a month through Facebook ads, you'll get a good price, but you're going to get a worse price than someone who's doing 30,000 a month with monthly recurring revenue, because that business is so much more consistent. And even if ads died tomorrow, you're still making 30 or 28K the next month. So I think that's really, really important to consider. Now, another thing which I think is almost a little bit funny is the whole AI, right? Like AI is obviously coming in, it's streamlining processes. And what I've seen with a lot of my partners in the US, that, even having AI in the name of the business is increasing its value.
Really?
Yeah, I've seen some really interesting case studies and examples of that. So, not to, mislead people that just put AI in a business idea, but anything you can do that'll streamline the business, increase efficiency, anything that has AI, right? It is really increasing the value because people want simplicity, consistency, and they want something that is as hands-off as possible with reason, knowing they're going to run the business. But, instead of having 80 staff, if you can have 3 staff and you can have some AI do, like, for example, order fulfillment, or it can do follow-ups for you, whatever it can do to increase the efficiency, I think is super valuable.
Nice. No,
Now,
that's
one
great
more
points.
thing
Anything
as
else?
well before I forget, Stuart, is there is a new, I guess, a new push for social selling. So it's a bit of a different concept.
Like live selling?
Yeah, exactly. And we've seen a lot of that recently in China, like with TikTok and Baidu and some of their other platforms.
Yep.
There have been people that have done, $1 million in a few days just selling products live.
Yeah.
And, I'm not saying to do $1 million in a day here in Australia, but TikTok Shops is very, very big in the US. And it's a platform that really allows you to build up a following to actually list and sell the products under the one shop, and find influencers to kind of build a brand around that one shop front. So what that will look like in regards to selling the business, I'm not sure, because it's still very, very new. But it is a great opportunity for somebody to come into the market and build a brand quickly
100%.
And then make sales. And I do know that TikTok Shops will be available in Australia sometime this year. I mean, they've been talking about it for a while.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's exciting to see, because I have a few friends in the US that, they start brands on TikTok and they've gone from, 0 to 200K a month in like 60 days. Whereas doing that with ads, I mean, you're going to have a lot of churn and a lot of ad spend before you get that proof of concept.
100%. I'm actually really excited about that as well myself, and I'm getting a little bit frustrated that it's taking so long to get to Australia. But it's good to see the trends, like you said, in China and the US, and how popular it is. So definitely keen to see how we go in Australia there and when it comes.
Perfect, mate.
All right, Phil, appreciate your time today, mate. I'm looking forward to seeing you in the group more. We'll organize some more videos like this to add value to the group. But thanks again for your time and chat to you soon.
Awesome, Stuart. I'll see you around, mate.
Will do. See ya.